In this video, I'm going to run through the exact structure that we use to set up our Google Ads accounts for e-commerce clients. I'm going to run through the three main phases from setting up a foundation, building and growing on that in phase 2 to phase 3 being all out scaling. I'm going to break down the exact campaign types we use, how to set them up for success, and how to know when you're ready to move on to the next phase. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So phase 1 is our foundation phase. So this is a phase that we're going to use for any new e-commerce accounts. So you might just be someone who's opened up your e-commerce store and you're jumping into both Facebook and Google Ads. You might be someone who's maybe doing 50 to 100K per month primarily through Facebook ads, and you've decided that now is time to move over to try Google and YouTube. If you're in either of those positions, well then you're going to want to start with phase 1 or a foundation phase. Likewise, if you're spending anywhere less than 10K per month, you're probably best off staying in phase 1 or foundation phase. So the very first campaign type that we're going to set up for the vast majority of businesses is branded search campaigns. Branded search campaigns serve search or text ads. So they will serve in the search engine results page, the organic listings. So the reason that you're going to want to run these campaigns is particularly if you've any competitors bidding on your brand name, it's really important that you don't lose out that potential traffic. Now, if you don't have competitors that are actively bidding on your brand name, then you might say to me, Liam, I don't see the point in bidding on branded search and wasting money on people who are going to click through our organic listing and who are going to make a purchase regardless of whether they come through organically or via the sponsored branded search campaign. And to that, I say that's a good point. I, for the most part, agree with it. If you don't have a lot of competition on your brand name or any competition at all, then there often isn't a place for a very aggressive branded search strategy. But when you're just starting out in Google Ads, it's really beneficial to feed the algorithm some early conversion data. And that just helps speed up any optimization or learning on the algorithm side. Easiest and the cheapest way to do this is via branded conversions, because branded conversions are very likely to come in quite quickly and at a higher volume than non-branded conversions will, at least in the initial phase. So that would be the one instance where I would say, okay, we don't have a lot of competition, but still I think it's beneficial to run a really low level budget and sweep up some of that branded traffic to help with overall machine learning and to really kick us into a solid gear from the get-go. And we consistently see the lowest CPA when using these settings. And this setting is starting with manual CPC bidding. And this is where we set a max bid that we're willing to pay for each keyword we're bidding on. So unlike other bid strategies, we really take control. So it's not an automated bid strategy. It's not something where Google is let bid really aggressively and sometimes we feel like we're overpaying. We have full control. The other alternative that I see mentioned quite a lot in terms of bid strategies is something known as target impression share. And with target impression share, you're essentially saying to Google, I want us to serve X percentage of the time, either in position 1 or in position 1 through 4. Quite often people will say, set a target impression share of 90 to 95%. And that means that I want Google to ensure that we're serving ads 90 to 95% of the time on our brand name. In principle, it's a good process to follow. You do want to be serving on that percentage of branded queries if you are opting to go after branded traffic. It does make sense. However, we feel and we have found with experiments with data that a manual CPC bidding approach where we dictate the exact bid outperforms target impression share. And as such, we always recommend manual CPC bidding. The next thing is keyword selection. So two things here. You are targeting branded traffic. So you want to make sure that you're only picking up branded traffic. So one way to do that is keep your keyword selection very tight. So choose brand name, obviously, but also choose some brand misspellings, maybe some iterations on your brand name. You might have a hero product that often get searched, but don't select broad match keywords because again, you're going to open yourself up to collecting non-branded traffic. And that's not what you want to be doing in this branded campaign. So we say focus on exact match and also add in some phrase match on your key terms. And the reason for that is that it allows you to find maybe new queries that people are searching when they are searching or showing interest in finding your brand. I'll often have a brand review. So if I'm Nike and there's a query for Nike reviews, often have that as a keyword that I'm targeting and direct that traffic directly to a either customer review page or testimonial page or things like that, or results page or something to build that social proof. Because if someone's searching for reviews on your site, they clearly are a little bit hesitant. So direct them there where you can have your customers singing your praises and just lowering that objection to buy. Next up then, just keep the budget low. This is fairly self-explanatory. As I said at the top of the video, this is not going to really help you with finding new customers. It's not going to have, a strong incremental growth aspect to your business, and it will tap out at a certain volume once you've achieved it. But for the start, I would keep it low budget, generally no more than 10% of your total budget. You want to be using Google as a vehicle to find people who wouldn't have otherwise found your website. So next up, we have hit branded search, and now we want to go on to branded shopping campaigns. And branded shopping campaigns are going to target the same type of queries as your branded search campaigns, but they're going to do it in a very different manner, serving very different ad types. And if you've seen my last video, you'll have seen the difference between search and shopping campaigns. Search campaigns are very text heavy, whereas shopping campaigns, you have this picture card essentially, whereas shopping campaigns, you have this product card that has product image, product title, store information, delivery information, everything like that. It's very visually appealing, and it gives the customer a whole lot of information before they make that click. And as such, it's really powerful for e-commerce businesses. But again, shopping ads can serve preferentially in order over search campaigns. So if you have a competitor who's bidding on your brand name, for example, and they are using shopping campaigns to do so, then they will serve preferentially even above your branded search listing. So what you're going to want to do is add that layer of brand protection, but on the shopping network. So we set up campaigns a couple of different ways, but generally what we'll do is we will have our shopping campaign that is targeting branded terms set up in such a way that it mirrors one of our prospecting campaigns. It's targeting the same devices, the same locations. So what we do then is we set our branded shopping campaign to a low priority setting. And that means that preferentially, this next campaign type that I'm going to talk about, non-branded shopping, gets all the queries first. It gets an option to serve ads for all the queries first. But the thing we're going to do here is we're going to put up a bit of a wall, and we're going to stop any branded queries coming through our non-branded shopping campaign. Everything else can go in here, but our brand queries can only go here. And that's dictated by these priority settings. In another video, I'm going to go into a whole lot of detail about how we set this up, how we make sure that the keywords flow correctly into the right campaign types. But for now, use a low priority setting. We generally focus on our best sellers here because, again, these are the products that people who are familiar with our brand, who've maybe seen us on Facebook or Instagram, are going to be looking for. We will focus on those best sellers, and then quite often what we'll do is we will front load those products with our brand name when it comes to our shopping campaigns. So what do I mean by that? I mean in our product titles. So if we go to say Nike, for example, Nike will have Nike Vaporfly 3. And the reason for that is instead of saying running shoe for men size 10, Nike Vaporfly 3 or whatever the shoe may be, people who are actively searching for Nike need to have their eye drawn to the brand name right away. And by front loading your product title in shopping ads, you're drawing the eye to people who are searching for your brand. So really powerful, and it's something that really improves CTR on our branded shopping campaigns. The next campaign type is your non-branded shopping campaign. And what we're going to use this for is to capture demand of product category searches. So this is really important. It's your first step in finding customers for your business that otherwise would not have found you. Like I said, instead of low priority setting like we have in branded search, we want to have a high priority setting with this campaign type. So by default, all queries will flow through this shopping campaign. Again, starting off, you're going to focus on your best sellers. Something I see far too often when I go into Google Ads accounts that are spending anywhere in the region of say 3K all the way up to even about 20K per month is that they have a shopping campaign or just a campaign set up in general that's spread so incredibly thin when it comes to budget between a whole variety of SKUs. And then essentially what you're doing is you're diluting how effective you can be. And your SKUs on your store are probably following Pareto's principle in that 20% of your products are most likely responsible for 80% of your sales volume. I see it time and time again. Yet budget split on Google is right down the middle. Each product is being given an equal budget, and it just is not effective. It is okay when you're further down the line and you're looking to increase your TAM on Google and you're looking to, tap into new audiences, new pockets, things like that. It does make sense. Add in new products, test new products. When you're starting out and you're spending that, 15 to 20K even per month, you're looking for Google to be successful for the get-go, and then you'll reinvest. So don't spread yourself too thin. Focus on bestsellers. Next thing is so important. Exclude branded keywords. Like I said, you want to have this really clear delineation between branded shopping and non-branded shopping campaigns. I think the most important reason is you want to be able to see performance of your non-branded campaigns, because that is what you're going to really judge Google's success or failure on, is how well our non-branded campaigns are working for us. Now, the issue I see far too often, it's in shopping campaigns, search campaigns, PMAX campaigns, is that you have this mix of branded traffic and non-branded traffic. And I'll ask a brand owner who maybe has an agency working for for them, I'll say, okay, what ROAS are you seeing on Google? And I don't ask that because I'm particularly interested in the answer. I'm asking it because I'm trying to figure out if the language around ROAS is really clear. The understanding of ROAS on Google is really clear, because the answer I'd like to hear is, well, we get a super high ROAS on all our branded traffic, but our non-branded ROAS is X. But I'll generally be met with an answer of something in the region of, oh, we see a 4 or 5x ROAS across our campaigns on Google. And the closer the ROAS is on your Performance Max campaign and your brand campaign and everything like that, the more alarm bells are going off in my head. And the reason for that is that there's a likelihood that there's contamination of these non-branded campaigns with branded traffic. So you're propping up those results essentially of non-branded campaigns, and it looks like you're doing fantastic. But in truth, the non-branded performance, which is supposedly going out to find you new customers on Google, is really, really poor. And when we strip out all that branded traffic, ROAS is 10, 15, 20 times lower than it looks or is being reported on. How can you make any, worthwhile business decisions when you are gearing, those decisions off of numbers that are completely superfluous? I would say that's the number one important reason for separating branded and non-branded campaigns. Everything else, it's to do with cleaner data. But for me, the main reason to have that clear split between branded and non-branded campaigns is so that you can see how well non-branded campaigns are working. And if and when you do look to scale those up, you're doing so with a lot more confidence than you otherwise would or could be doing if branded traffic was leaking into all your other campaigns as well. Then the last thing I'm going to say here is to try and consolidate your data. So back in the day, 5, 6, 7 years ago on Google, we would have a lot of separation of campaigns, of ad groups, of products. Things were very, very manual. We were managing a lot of things ourselves, so that separation gave us more clarity on what was doing what. Now, the train of thought across the whole industry is to consolidate where possible. And the reason for that is because Google's algorithm is getting stronger and stronger. And with each quarter that passes, we're leaning more and more aggressively into smart bidding, whereby Google dictates how aggressively we'll bid in particular auctions. It's more of an automated bid strategy than us having that manual approach. So we still have manual approaches on those branded campaigns, but for the most part, we're going to try and move these non-branded campaigns into an automated bid strategy where Google is dictating our competitiveness at the auction. Now, in order for Google to be more successful when it does that, we need to feed Google consolidated data so it learns quickly. So instead of segmenting all these non-branded shopping campaigns into individual campaigns or splitting them out, what we generally try to do as much as possible, at least when it makes sense, when targets are the same, when we're in the same region and things like that, is we will consolidate into one ad group, one campaign, and that just allows for better data aggregation and quicker machine learning. So that is our phase one, our foundation phase. Generally, it's 3 campaign types. We're going to use these campaign types here to focus on protecting our brand. We're going to use our non-branded shopping campaign as our first venture out into finding new customers for our business. So next up, we are going to have our expansion phase. And our expansion phase is still going to follow these 3 campaign types to start with. And this is the important thing here. Each phase is going to differ by the new campaigns we add. We're not taking away campaigns. We're building on the existing campaigns that we have already created and optimized in the earlier phases. So when do we move to phase 2? Well, generally we move to phase 2 if we're seeing positive performance in this campaign here, this non-branded shopping campaign. And the reason for that is that when we see positive performance in non-branded shopping, we're going to review what areas of that campaign have performed well. So what search queries are performing really well for us? So are we seeing a pattern where particular search queries are converting really well or particular products are converting really well? And if the answer to that is yes, if there's clear winning products or clear winning search queries, well, what we're going to do is we're going to spin those back into non-branded search campaigns. And the reason for that is that we're going to be able to expand our reach across the search network. So we're going to layer on non-branded search campaigns. So we're still expanding into those product categories that we had previously been targeting on shopping campaigns. So the same rule applies here as it does in phase 1. We want to keep a clear separation between branded search and shopping, our branded queries, and all of our non-branded campaigns. We're going to exclude branded keywords here, and we're still going to exclude them here as well. This is non-branded search. Going to take our high performing search terms from our non-branded shopping. We'll add them as exact or phrase match to begin with. And the reason we don't add them broad again is because we're still in an early phase in our ad account. And with that, we want to give Google the keywords we know to convert. And we don't want to give Google too loose of a leash because it can overspend when it's learning. So we're going to add keywords we know convert in either exact or phrase match. And a really important thing that we're going to do is we're going to segment our non-branded search campaign into ad groups. And we're going to do this in terms of relevance. So what do I mean by that? Well, this is probably one of the most important fundamental principles when it comes to being successful on Google Ads. And the principle is that relevance trumps all. And with that, what I mean is Google is going out of its way, especially nowadays when it's competing with all of these large language models in terms of browsing patterns and behaviors. It's maybe not got as large a market share as it once had, yet it's still performing really well. But Google needs to create an ad experience alongside a browsing experience that's really valuable and really relevant for its users. So if we're able to serve ads that are deemed relevant to the queries we're targeting by Google, then Google rewards us with lower CPCs. So if we can have a really cohesive experience from search query, ad copy, click on the ad, landing page, buy the product, and it's all a very smooth, cohesive funnel, well, then Google's going to reward us. And the way it rewards us is by basically giving us a discount at auction time. At auction time, we have basically the bid, the amount we're willing to pay, and how relevant our ad is. If we're willing to pay a bit more, well, then our ad actually doesn't have to be as relevant, but we're paying premium. But the opposite also applies. If we can have a really, really relevant ad experience, well, then the bid that we need to pay, or the cost per click to serve that ad, is less. So if we segment our ad campaigns into really tight cohorts of keywords that are super relevant to each other, it's much easier for us to create not only landing pages, but also ad copy that's really closely linked to those keywords. Whereas if we had 15 or 20 keywords that were, ranging across all different product categories, and then we just had one ad and ad copy that was trying to cover everything, it wouldn't really be incredibly relevant. It would either be too broad if we were trying to cover everything, or if our ad copy was really specific to certain keywords, it wouldn't be relevant at all to other keywords. So what we want to do is to create each ad group whereby we can say, okay, the 5 to 8 keywords max, and that's the most I'd be putting into a single ad group, that we have in this ad group are really closely related. And each of these keywords in our ad group are really closely linked to the ad copy we're using and the landing page we're directing to. And if you do that, if you follow that principle from the get-go, you'll be much more successful on Google. It's a really important principle to be following. So now that we have layered on search into our non-branded efforts, there's a high likelihood that we are now getting a lot of people to the website, and that's fantastic. But if you're an e-commerce business, you know that 97, 98, 99% sometimes of people who visit your store don't buy. So your conversion rate might be between 1 and 2.5%. So even if you're on the higher end at 2.5 or 3%, well, 97 out of 100 people aren't going to buy. Some people will never buy, and that's okay. It's part of the game. But some people just need an extra shove, basically, for want of a better term. So what is that shove? Well, it's some form of remarketing. Now, with remarketing, you can remarket on Facebook and Instagram, but you can also remarket on Google. And when we set up our conversion actions on Google and we get everything set up properly in the backend, we can do something called dynamic remarketing. Dynamic remarketing, unlike static remarketing, means that we can show different products to different people. And what products do we show to, what people? Well, it generally is the products that people have interacted with. So either they visited the product page, they've added it to cart, they began checkout even, but they haven't converted. Well, we can show the exact products that they interacted with, and we can show them either on the display network, or we can show them as part of video campaigns. So with a video campaign, we'll show them a piece of video, but we'll also have almost like product catalog ads, if you're familiar with Facebook, serving alongside the video. So, that is ultimately going to really increase relevance again. Google's going to reward that, number one, but also you're going to have a much higher click-through rate. If I am looking at a particular running shoe, for example, and I just didn't buy it for whatever reason, I got distracted, or I said I'd come back in a few days' time, and I saw that exact running shoe as opposed to just a random other piece of footwear or clothing or something on your website, then I'm going to be much more inclined to click through on the product that I know, I've researched, I've interacted with, than just a generic product. From that perspective, our remarketing is going to be so much more powerful. So we can use remarketing within PMax, we can use display remarketing, or we can also, which I haven't included here, use it on YouTube as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to re-engage people who have visited the site but haven't yet converted. And my recommendation is to set up dynamic remarketing. And once again, in this course, I am going to go through exactly how to do that from top to toe. And now the last phase. So this is phase 3. So phase 3 for us is growth. Once again, we've got branded search and branded shopping. We have our clear distinction in terms of branded terms. They're going to stay in there. So that's going to be brand only. This is going to be non-brand, everything going after new customers inside here. Non-branded shopping, non-branded search, remarketing, we've already touched on that. And now if we're seeing success across many different Google Ads campaign types, so we're seeing success maybe across search, across shopping, maybe across display, well then what we're going to do is we're going to layer in one of Google's campaign campaigns that is most easy to scale, in my opinion. Once again though, really important, we exclude our brand from this campaign type. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to interpret how well the campaign is doing because it's going to be leaking branded traffic. So really, really important that we do that, and we do it across the board. We do it here, but we also do it here in our Performance Max campaign. So if you watch my last video, you'll know that Performance Max encompasses search, shopping, video, display, demand gen. So once again, the same rule applies. This is really, really important with Performance Max, is that it's incredibly reliant on machine learning. And one thing I see happen too often, too quickly, is people segmenting out the Performance Max campaigns. For the most part, I start with one campaign and I maybe split my asset groups, and notice how I say asset groups and not ad groups. There's a difference in the language. So ad groups for your search or your shopping campaigns, but they're known as asset groups for your Performance Max campaigns. I'll split those out in the same manner that I would have split out maybe my non-branded search campaign. So I'll focus on ad relevance. So I'll take all the assets, so all the ad copy, all the images, all the videos, all the products that I have in a particular asset group, and I'll eyeball that and I'll say, okay, well, if this video is shown with this ad copy and this product, does that all create a cohesive message around a single piece of relevant information for the potential user? And if the answer is no, well, then I'm going to split them out into relevant asset groups, and that's Performance Max. And I'll follow that principle, but I'll still try to keep it under one campaign. So these campaigns are still going to talk to each other when you separate them out, but my feeling is that performance is much better, at least in the initial term with Performance Max, if you segment out at asset group level as opposed to at campaign level. Now, if you're targeting the US and Canada and Australia, then it does make sense to have different campaigns. But for the most part, if you're in a single market and you're just looking to, layer on Performance Max, I'd start with your best-selling terms, your best-selling product categories, best-selling products, and only segment at the asset group level. As I said, use your brand exclusions, focus on consolidation, and set things up. You're going to have to be super patient with Performance Max. It can be very choppy in the initial term, and that's because it's using machine learning really heavily, very much dependent on how much data you have across the entire account, so how well you've been building through these phases. If you've been following this strategy carefully and you've been intentionally layering on these new campaigns and not doing, throwing spaghetti at the wall and setting everything up in one go, well, then you're much more likely to see success with Performance Max because you're only doing it off the back of previous campaign successes on search and shopping campaigns. And the very last campaign that I'm going to walk through is demand gen or YouTube. So it's kind of two campaigns, so kind of cheating, but they're really important in that we use demand gen to set up a lot of our YouTube campaigns. And for us, it's something that's worked really well. We can test loads of creative really quickly. We just see the performance work that bit better for us. We will always try to exclude remarketing lists here unless it's an intentional remarketing play. But we're going to test different audiences, so people who are in market for your product categories. We're going to test all sorts of demographics, affinity audiences. There's nothing that we won't test because it's still at a period in time when it comes to demand gen where there is no single best practice, in my opinion. Very different for different businesses. What audience type works well? You can have lookalike audiences, you can things like that. But ultimately, it's all about testing different audiences and testing a whole host of different creative. So a lot of people will take their best performing creative from Meta. It's a good place to start. Not 100% like for like in that if something performs well on Meta, it's guaranteed to perform well on Google and vice versa. They do share a lot of similarities, especially on YouTube Shorts. So I would start with your best performers on Meta. And in the same way that if you're managing Facebook ads, you're looking at things like hook and hold rate and everything like that, and general engagement, CTR. You're not just looking at purchases. You have to do the same on Google. And unfortunately, as Google media buyers, it's maybe not something that a lot of people are familiar with because it's relatively new video in Google ads, but it's just not a general media buying approach that a lot of PPC managers are used to. Now, luckily for us, we also are incredibly used to managing video campaign on Facebook. We know what to look out for, how to know if video is doing well, if it's a hook issue, if it's a body issue. So you need to be looking at things like, how long are people watching through? So you get insight into, view percentage, 25, 50, 75%, 100% watch rate, things like that, average watch time. So you can see when people are falling off. So that's the level of detail you need to get into if you're looking to add demand gen or YouTube to your portfolio on Google Ads. So if you're not willing to get into that level of detail, don't do it. You're better off consolidating your video creative over on Meta. But for e-commerce brands that we're working with who are doing maybe 4 to 750k a month and they're just beginning to see performance struggle a small bit on Facebook, it's only natural. As you scale, things get slightly less efficient. So then it becomes a good opportunity to go and start testing on demand gen. Try and get up as many exclusions as possible so you can be focusing on cold traffic. Look at net new reach, things like that. That's a really important metric. It's really useful for us to see how well we're, targeting cold audiences. And the most important thing with demand gen and YouTube is patience. So like I said, with Performance Max, you need to have a lot of patience. You need to be twice as patient ultimately when it comes to demand gen or YouTube campaigns. I've seen initial performance be quite slow on demand gen and video, and I try to always warn brand owners that, okay, you're going to need to show patience here. It's not going to be an overnight fix like sometimes it is on Meta. You know within 2 or 3 days if you've got a winning ad or not. It can be much slower, but you do still have lead indicators that can paint a much clearer picture as to how well you're doing, even if your purchases or your ROAS looks really, really poor. As I said, you're looking for things like engagement, click-through rate, CPMs, how competitive you're being, how effective you're being, and how engaging you're being. And these are lead indicators you need to look for. So if you're not willing to have that period of pain for, as I said, 4 to 6 weeks, and sometimes even longer, generally it's in that 4-week mark that we'll have a really good understanding. But if you're not willing to put at least a month of patience and ad spend behind video campaigns on Google, well, then now is not the time. You're better off keeping that budget inside Meta, or looking to expand in search or shopping campaigns on Google. So when do we move over from phase 2 to phase 3? Well, there's no clear distinction. We will generally, if we're seeing performance work well on both shopping and search from a non-branded perspective, we'll generally look to layer in Performance Max to try and expand into new pockets, new audiences, new keywords based on shopping and search, because ultimately Performance Max is going to prioritize particularly shopping placements because it does best for e-commerce. So no set period of time. If you're doing over 20, 30K per month, it's very unlikely we won't have some element of Performance Max in there, either on a retargeting basics. But what I would say to you is that you really want to be seeing success across ultimately these 5 campaign types before you add Performance Max to your portfolio. Thereafter, only make a decision on demand gen and YouTube if you have the patience to withstand a little bit of pain at the start while things are learning. Hopefully you found this video useful. This is the structure that we use. So we always start in phase 1, setting up a really solid foundation, having patience at the start, not just setting up a whole host of campaigns or automated campaigns like Performance Max and hoping things work. Because when things work, it's fantastic, but when they don't, you've no return, you've learned nothing, it's no good to you. So instead, set things up intentionally in this manner and only progress through different phases once you're happy that your initial phase is working well, you're profitable, you're hitting your KPIs, and then move on to your next phase. So phase 2 being expansion, where we expand in product categories across search and we add in our remarketing. And phase 3 is where we scale. We'll often scale using Performance Max alongside all these other campaign types. So I hope you found the video useful. I'm going to be breaking down all of these campaign types, all of the setups, the structures we use in later videos. But for now, I'll see you at the next one.